So hope you all have a good time today. There's lots of interesting sessions. What we are going to do today is talk to you about how Salesforce protects your data while it's hosted on our platform. My name is Chetan Sansare. I'm a Trust and Security Advisor at Salesforce. A large part of what I do is be on the field, work with customers, help them understand what we do, how we protect your data while it's hosted on the platform.
And my name is Doug Merritt. I'm very honoured to be Chetan's boss. So I look after all the architecture, technology, and security specialists for APAC. I've been helping Salesforce customers understand how they do what we do for the last 10 or so years. So looking forward to answering any questions you have afterwards. Chetan, please.
Thank you. You probably have seen this slide a zillion times. I try to simplify it a little bit because I'm not a lawyer. We sell a lot of things. We talk about a lot of features, capabilities, roadmaps. What this slide is saying is whenever you make your purchasing decisions, please make them based on what's available right now rather than based on what's available in the future. To kick off the agenda, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we define trust. Now, I think all relationships are based on the principles of trust, and it's the same for us. We'll just take a peek inside the hood and see what trust means for Salesforce.
You hear?
Then I'll talk about how Salesforce manages the hosting infrastructure, which is security of the cloud. This is something we do for all our customers, but every customer is different. So what we have done is we have given customers a lot of customer configurable options within the application layer that you can use to configure your org or configure your instance of Salesforce. And I'll talk a little bit about what that is. Then Doug will talk about Salesforce Shield. So Salesforce Shield is a suite of 3 products or 3 services. And it basically complements or extends the capability or the security of Salesforce beyond what we traditionally offer out of the box. Last, we'll have a demo on transaction security. So transaction security is a component of Shield Event Monitoring. So we'll run you through what it is. It's a real-time data leakage prevention option, a solution, and then we'll do the Q&A. Right, so trust is our #1 core value. And what that really means is it's basically these 5 principles. Now, as you can imagine, security of customer data is the most important pillar of trust. So today we have about 150 to 180,000 customers on the platform. What that means, and these customers are across different industries. So what that means is we are hosting a large volume of data, a large volume of sensitive data on our platform today. So it's our responsibility to secure this data while we are hosting it on our platform. So when we pioneered cloud computing about 20 years ago, we didn't really have anyone to look up to, anyone to copy. So Salesforce started building our own security systems. We started designing our own security controls. So everything is built up from scratch, and security was never an afterthought for us. So securing your data is important, but that's not the only important thing for us. So all our customers are running critical business processes on Salesforce. They are also building critical apps on Salesforce. So there is a natural expectation that the apps are highly performant, they're highly available. And through our unique system architecture and data center technologies, we have enabled or we have built a highly reliable, highly available, and highly resilient system today. We do a number of things, again, at the back of, behind the scenes to give customers the level of availability performance that they usually expect from a cloud service provider like Salesforce. Few of the things is, examples would be, we do a data center technology refresh every couple of years. What that means is we're looking at new technologies, we're looking at new hardware to make sure that we're using the latest and the best for all our customers. We also look at a lot of off-the-shelf commercially available products. A good example is in 2017, Salesforce acquired a company called Twin Prime. We call it Salesforce Edge. It's a mobile app accelerator platform, and they have a unique proprietary methodology which uses AI and machine learning to analyze the variations between the wireless last mile loop, which is typically why the mobile applications tend to be slower. So we invest in a lot of these products as well. Multi-tenancy is at the heart of what we do. So our platform is multi-tenant. It's shared between a number of customers. And not only does that enable us to democratize services or resources, but it also helps us focus all our efforts for security, development, innovation on the one single version of Salesforce. So there are only 2 versions of Salesforce, the current one and the next one. Every customer will be on the same version of Salesforce. And innovation is also very important to us, last but not the least. The way we do this is we have 3 releases each year. And what these releases is a set of new features, a bunch of new features that we give to our customers. Now you may ask, what are these features, or what are these capabilities? So Salesforce has a huge ecosystem of partners and customers. So we take active feedback from customers, and we put that into our development work and give that as a release to our customers. Now I spoke about security as being one of the important pillars for us. What we have done is we have built a defense in-depth security framework. Layman terms language, defense in-depth basically means you have various levels or various controls across different layers of the environment. And the reason we do that is if one control fails, you have something to back it up. So right from the physical down to the host, we have a number of different layers that we have built across the environment. So if you look at the physical or the infrastructure layer, all customer data is stored in 2 data centers. So we're using a regional hosting model. There is a primary, there is a secondary, and they both will be in the same region for you. There's no other place where we store our customer data. There's a lot of physical security means at these data centers. So there's 24/7 guards, you have biometrics, you have CCTV monitoring inside as well as at the perimeter. We also do a lot of disaster recovery exercises throughout the year, so at least once per year. We are backing up data between these 2 sites I mentioned. There's a primary and secondary. So we're using encrypted replication over a secure private network to back this data up. We also have a lot of third-party certifications, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But also our co-location data center providers as well as our public cloud infrastructure providers like Amazon, they undergo a number of audits throughout the year to make sure that someone is independently coming in and validating the controls to make sure they are working as they're supposed to. Last but not the least, we also encourage a lot of customer audits. So a lot of our customers run penetration tests on Salesforce. And the reason we like that is because, remember I mentioned we are running a multi-tenant environment, which is the one version across. So if a customer runs a pen test and they find a vulnerability that we haven't found or we haven't remediated, then we'll fix it and everyone across the globe benefits from that. So that's the reason why we encourage that. From a network point of view, all connections between your browser and Salesforce data center will use TLS. We automatically route to TLS 1.2 if your organization supports that. We do a lot of pen tests ourselves, and when I say ourselves, I mean we have internal security teams that periodically run these checks, but we also have third-party agencies coming in and doing a lot of pen tests. So I mentioned 3 releases each year. We will run a pen test before anything gets deployed in production, and we have a security one and done concept, which means nothing gets released into production with a priority 0 or a priority 1 bug. We use advanced threat detection. There's a number of ways in which we do this, but primarily it's through a number of tools, threat intel that we receive from various sources, as well as a lot of processes that we have developed and mastered over the time. We have a secured segmented network internally. And what that means is you have an app tier, you have a web tier, you have a database tier, and the traffic between these tiers is inspected by firewalls that are hardened and have stateful inspection enabled. We also do continuous monitoring. So we have a full-time blue team or the computer security incident response teams. And their job is to look at these logs that we receive from all of the infrastructure that we have. We collate it to a central point. They're only read-only mode, so no one can tamper with these logs. And we are also using Einstein analytics because there's a lot of logs that we're looking at on a daily basis. So we are trying to identify patterns, we're trying to identify issues before they impact our customers. We also have a full-time red team, which is based in our Sydney office, and they have the cool job of being paid to try and hack into Salesforce, so that works well. Now, while we do so much, and we think that we've built the most trusted enterprise services cloud, it is important for us, it's important for our customers to have someone independently validate what we're saying is true, which is why we do a lot of audits throughout the year. So we are ISO 27001 certified, which is an ISMS specification. We do ISO 27017, which is the security for the cloud. We are ISO 27018 certified, which is basically privacy or protection of personal data in the cloud. We also do SOC reports, so we do SOC audits twice a year, and we produce type 2 reports, which we share with our customers. We are PCI DSS level 1 certified. Our data centers in Japan are IRAP certified, and we are listed on the CCSL, or the ASD Certified Cloud Service Providers list. What that means is we can work with government agencies in Australia and host unclassified DLM workloads. We also do the ASP SAS. Now this is it's Japan-specific certification. It's governed by an organization called ASPIC, and it's nothing but an information disclosure certification system. We are compliant with Privacy Mark. So Privacy Mark is again a certification to assess enterprises that are taking measures to protect the personal data that we're hosting on the cloud today. CSA is the Cloud Security Alliance. They have a number of different certifications across different levels. We self-certify to their STAR program. And last but not the least, UK Cyber Essentials. So this is a UK government best practice governance framework. It's required for UK government public sector agencies. So you can see there's a decent mix of payment card industry, there's a decent mix of government certifications that we do, and this is not the entire list. So if you go to compliance.salesforce.com, you can actually look at all our certifications by product, by region, so that gives you a good picture. A good segue into that, so last year, June last year, we released this compliance documentation portal. Now what this allows existing customers to do is log in and download all of these certifications that I was referring to previously. So you can log in and you can download. So from a 2 to 3 business day turnaround, it's basically now immediate. You can access these whenever you want. In terms of the hosting infrastructure, so we have 10 co-located data centers across the globe. And then we have Amazon Public Cloud Infrastructure in Australia and Canada. We also have global monitoring. So we have 24/7 follow-the-sun monitoring. And there are 2 types of monitoring that we do. The first one is what is called as SRE, or Site Reliability Engineering teams. The remit that these teams have is to look at availability, look at performance. So if the performance degrades, if there is an availability issue, then these teams will switch the customers over onto the secondary. The second thing we do is incident response. So we have 24/7, again, follow-the-sun model incident response teams. They are monitoring all Salesforce events, which is what is Salesforce employee doing, as well as customer activity. So if there is an activity which we think we need to inform a customer about, we'll notify the customer that we are seeing something happening in your environment, and we can even block that access. What to you, Doug?
Thanks a lot, Chetan. So as Chetan talked about earlier, the right-hand side of the slide is all about infrastructure security. So we look after all the things around firewalls, distributed denial of service attacks, et cetera, intrusion detection. And actually, by the way, the slides are going to be available to you afterwards. Please take photos if you like. This is my good side, so make sure you get that one. But the thing is, you can take copies of this if you'd like, but we will have the slides available for you afterwards. So as we said, the right-hand side is all about what we do to make sure your data is safe. On the left-hand side, the application side, is more about what you need to do to keep your data safe, because it's a shared model. So what we mean is, you need to look after your definition of how you configure Salesforce to be secure. One of the prime examples is we would suggest that you should limit access to your version of Salesforce from your corporate network, which means people who need to access it have to come via the VPN to actually get into Salesforce. It also means that you put 2-factor authentication in. If you manage to get phished and your credentials are stolen, they can't be used because they're not logging in from your corporate network and they don't have your 2-factor authentication device. So it's just extra layers of security which you need to configure to make sure your stuff's kept safe. Along with the field level security and the object level security. These will limit what people can see inside your version of Salesforce. There's no use giving everybody read everything permissions because, sometimes things should be kept a little bit secret. So the whole point of having a good definition of who can see what is managed by your Salesforce roles and your Salesforce profiles and also permission sets. So those are your configuration tools you get to play with to actually help you limit access to your Salesforce data inside your environment. And a great way to check how you're getting on with this is right around in the Salesforce Health Check. This has been around for a couple of releases now, and this is the Salesforce standard baseline I'm comparing one of my demonstration orgs with. And as you can tell, I didn't follow the rules very well. I've only got 59% set up. I'm quite poor. But the point is, there's a little button up the top right called Fix Risks. Say that fast. But Fix Risks, should have tried to left that alone. So when you click that button, it'll go through and set your Salesforce org up to the Salesforce basic standards. Now you can actually configure that yourself to make it your own baseline. So if you want to have stronger configuration options than what we have as what we suggest is a baseline, please feel free to do so. And then you can actually test your Salesforce org against that. So we've talked all about what we do for standard Salesforce out of the box sort of configuration and security. Let's talk a little bit now about what Salesforce Shield adds on top. So this is a bit more of a pictorial diagram of what Chetan spoke about earlier on. We look after the security data centers, penetration testing, user permissions, 2-factor authentication, all that sort of good stuff. We do all of that for you. What does Shield do? Well, Shield adds these 3 extra capabilities. Shield is not a product. Shield is 3 products. event monitoring, field audit trail, and platform encryption. The 3 products, you can buy them separately, you don't have to buy all 3. And these 3 products will actually give you some extra capabilities on top of what Salesforce does for standard. So let's start off with platform encryption. So what does platform encryption actually do? As we mentioned earlier, all the traffic going from your browser or your integration to Salesforce is always encrypted in transit by using TLS 1.2, hopefully, otherwise 1.1. But when it gets to Salesforce, by default, it's not encrypted at rest. And that's not normally a problem because Salesforce, as we heard, is extremely secure and it's all great. That's no problem at all. However, if you need to, and we'll talk about that in a second, you can actually enable platform encryption and it will allow you to encrypt most custom fields, some standard fields, all the files and attachments you have. It also helps you encrypt your search indexes, plus all Einstein data discovery and also Einstein analytics data. So you can encrypt all that sort of goodness. Now, that's a good thing. However, strong encryption does cause challenges to the data because when you strongly encrypt it, it makes it harder to use. However, we've minimized the impact as much as we can to that by natively integrating it with search, with chatter, with lookups, mobile reports, etc. So all of those will still work perfectly okay. Except you need to make sure that the data is there that you need to look at, and you need to still limit people's access via the field security features. So after you've encrypted, you need to actually manage these keys, and you can even control your own keys as well. We have different bring your own key scenarios, which we can discuss a bit later on if you'd like. Now I mentioned that platform encryption, you can turn it on if you would like. Now, why would you need to turn it on? Well, regulatory compliance is the main one. People say, oh, we need to encrypt because of regulations. There's only a very, very few regulations that actually require encryption. One of them is PCI DSS. If you're storing credit card data inside Salesforce, you must encrypt it. You do not need platform encryption to be PCI DSS compliant. Our standard classic encryption allows you to do that out of the box as part of your standard solution. Platform encryption is there to help you protect against, like we said, unauthorized access to the database. Now that's not your employees' unauthorized access, it's our employees' unauthorized access. Now obviously our Salesforce DBAs can see your data in aggregate. Remember it's multi-tenant, right? So all your data is stored in one lumping great table and the DBAs can see that. But it's only in aggregate, it's not in context, they can't see your data, they don't know whose data it is. But if they start doing a query which actually could bring up data that is tied to you, they'll actually get flagged because they shouldn't be doing that. And our CSIRT team will actually go and work out what's going on. Or someone steals our disks. They manage to break into a database and steal our disks. That's a pretty low risk scenario in my opinion. But anyway, the most common requirement for encryption is contractual obligations. You've told your customers when you store their data, you will encrypt it. So that's up to you, it's part of your internal compliance. And sometimes your internal compliance also says you need to encrypt PII data, person identifiable information. Now, that's great, but just be aware there are some degradations in capability when you do use platform encryption. So do not turn it on willy-nilly and do not turn it on at everything. It's not going to make your data safer because it does not stop sharing model or object field level security. If your employees can see a field because of field level security and that field is encrypted, they will see it in plain text no matter what. Okay, it does not stop your employees seeing your data in any way, shape or form. It's not a data residency solution and it doesn't protect against social engineering. Hello, I'm Fred from IT. Can you please tell me what your password is? Oh, right? So it doesn't help about any of that whatsoever. So if you look on the right-hand side here, we have all these other capabilities which Salesforce does for you to make sure it's nice and safe. So identity, two-factor authentication, et cetera, et cetera. Platform encryption adds this much extra security on top of your data in reality. So really work out, is it really worthwhile you using it to make your data safe? Okay, let's talk about other things that do make your data a bit more safe. So if you're in a regulated industry, like finance, for example, in Australia, there is a reason to actually keep data changes for a period of time. So in Australia terms, 7 years for APRA. So if you're a banking organisation or insurance company, or you've got your own corporate compliance, you've got to keep data changes for at least 7 years or 10 years, depending upon what your regulations are. Now, by default, Salesforce will keep data changes on up to 20 fields for 18 months per object. The data will always be there, but the data changes, right? So when you change a bit of data, it'll say, Doug, changed this field from X to Y today. That change record will vanish after 18 months, unless you buy Field Audit Trail. When you buy Field Audit Trail, you get that data change capture for 10 years, and it will also let you capture up to 60 fields, not 20. So that's what this can provide for you. Now, in my personal view, event monitoring will add a dramatic amount of security to your data. This is what you need to do, because event monitoring enables you to track exactly who has seen what data, when they saw it, and where they saw it. It helps you stop data leakage, so who saw it and when. So if someone decides to leave your company and take the data with them, then you can tell that Fred actually looked at this stuff and that's not good, right? You also track data usage. So who has seen what? So VIPs, for example. If you're a retailer or a bank or someone like that sort of stuff, you deal with VIPs quite a lot. The call center staff have to be able to see the VIP information, otherwise they can't service them, right? But if someone starts doing a whole bunch of curiosity searches to see who's around, that's not a great thing. So that's where this can help you solve that problem. And also tracking user behavior and user adoption. That's another side effect of event monitoring. It's a great tool to help you work out how Salesforce is being used inside your organization. So it's great for adoption as well as also the security part of it. So now, because you know who has seen what and when, there's something which we have as part of event monitoring called transaction security. So how are these events happening all the time? And you can gather insights from that. We give you a Einstein for Analytics workbench that actually lets you have a look at all these information in a nice browser fashion. But if you have something like Splunk or New Relic, Polera, etc., you can also export that into those tools to actually keep this information fresh. With transaction security, you can put policies in place that will enable you to stop actions on your data. And this is the key trick. This is where you actually are adding a lot of value to your security to your data. Because what you're able to do at real time, you can set up some policies to actually stop people extracting data out of your version of Salesforce, for example. Or you can enforce two-factor authentication if they'll start to do something that needs to be a bit more secure. So when you get to a certain point in Salesforce, you've got to do two-factor to re-authenticate who you are. And it can be set up with clicks or code. And here's an example. So what we have is a transaction security policy is made up of a critical event. So did you run a report, or did you try and export some data, or did you try and log on? What the notification is, and then what's the real-time action? What do you want to do? Block them, do two-factor authentication, or do nothing? And what I'd like to do is actually show a little demo around that. So Chetan will be my lovely assistant to my left. And what we're going to see, please, is on the screen, you've actually got Chetan running a report. So Chetan's available to run our report. And so he clicks the run, and you get a nice little list of about 300 and so customer records. Now, Chetan is normally a nice person, but unfortunately today he's going to be a baddie. He's going to try and export this and take it away with him to take it to a competitor. So he clicks on the button, does export as, and he can download that to Excel. And as you see, ta-da, it's now in Excel, and he's got the data, and he's put it on his USB stick, and off he goes. He's got this data. Now, that's not a good thing. So let's have a look at the transaction security policy. We've got one in there for blocking contact exports. So the top one up there, it's actually disabled at the moment. So what Chetan's going to do is enable that. And after that's attached, the next time anybody tries to do something like run a report, so Chetan goes back to his report, just tries to export it now, didn't run it again, just exports it now, tries to extract it, and up comes a generic error message. You don't want to tell them, oh, terribly sorry, you can't extract more than 200 records. That defeats the purpose. This is a generic error message to let people know that something's gone wrong, you can't do something, right? So that's how that worked. When you go back to the actual policy itself, here's some nice code. If you want to look at some code. The bits up here are the event itself, and then you work out how many records, what's the entity you're looking at, and there's the query. If entity name is contact and number of records greater than 200, then return true, which means block. That's it. That's how hard's that? Now the point is that's in code. So you can do whatever you want there. You can have different profiles of different levels, different managers of different levels, whatever, right? You can set it up to actually, you submit it, it blocks it, it goes to your, somebody else who's got to approve it to then let people do the export again. Now, while that actually happened, an email got sent out as well. So not only was it blocked, but Chetan's now been pinged, and there's been a security alert sent out to the CSERT team. So now it says Chetan tried to run an export. So not only was it blocked, but now it's been alerted, and the gentleman come around with a big hammer and say, terribly sorry, Chetan, you shouldn't be doing that. And that's basically it. So that's a little demo we did of transaction security to actually point out why it actually adds a lot of extra value. So if we can go back to the slides, please. Any questions? So if someone wouldn't mind grabbing a mic, and hands up please, and we will get someone to run around and ask the questions. And while we're doing that, just to keep this conversation going, please go to the demo stations in the expo area, and you can also tap on the way out to actually make sure you get given the security guide that we talked about a bit earlier on as well.
Yeah, you mentioned credit cards.
Yes.
Them. Can you elaborate a little bit more on retrieval of those and PCI compliance around that?
Okay, so Salesforce as a company is PCI compliant. That means, because we take credit cards from our customers, right? And we actually have capability inside of Salesforce that lets you encrypt custom fields. It's called classic encryption, and you can actually encrypt a field that you call credit card number. And as long as you only store credit card numbers in that field, and you do everything else to be PCI compliant, like you don't store the 3-digit code at the back, and et cetera, the whole bunch of things you've got to do to be PCI compliant. If you do all that, and you get your PCI compliance verification person to come along and give you a certificate, then you're sweet. But most people don't try and store credit cards. Normally go to a payment provider who actually do all that for you. It's probably the easiest way to approach it.
But you could.
You could. Any other questions? Okay, we either bored you stupid. Oh no, we have another one.
Does Shield support bring your own key?
Right, does Shield support bring your own key? Yes, it does. So there's multiple different levels of bring your own key. There's one where you can actually bring along your own tenant secret. So that means that you can provide part of the key generation capability. So we provide a couple of parts, you provide one part, and it goes through an engine that actually would derive a key for you. You could also provide a service whereby we can call you to actually get the actual key if you'd like that as well. That involves a lot more hardware on your side, and if it doesn't work, well then you can't use Salesforce. But there's multiple different levels. Happy to talk about that a bit later on if you'd like. It's all in the lovely white paper about Shield encryption, platform encryption. It's a nice white paper, it explains how it all works in detail. Anything else? Yes?
Does Shield encryption impact APIs, like how the data goes out and in of Salesforce?
Absolutely not. So the whole point about platform encryption, it does not impact anything to do with user interface or API. If you come in plain text, it comes out in plain text. It's encrypted at rest. That's all it does.
Hi, hello. Just a quick question. So you mentioned the penetration testing and even red teaming you're participating in. Is it the third-party vendor or are you doing by yourself?
We do internal checks ourselves, but also we have third parties that do at least 3 penetration tests a year on us.
Can we have like the results of this test?
Exactly. If you go to the compliance documentation, you can download the results from the most recent one.
Thank you.
If you'd like to run your own, you're very welcome to do so as well. Just go to a website, which we can talk about later. It actually gives you a link to then be approved to actually do a penetration test.
And how secure is the data from foreign governments, albeit the Patriot Act and blind subpoenas asking access to the data?
Okay, so Patriot Act doesn't exist anymore, actually. It's called something else now. I forget what it's called exactly. Do you know what it's called? The Patriot Act went to something else. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, right?
Blind subpoena.
Still a blind subpoena, yeah. So we have to comply with all laws of the countries in which we work. So if we get a blind subpoena, we have to hand it over. But we will always fight for that. And if there isn't a blind subpoena, if it's a subpoena which we get given saying, hey, hand over data for company X, then we will let you know if we possibly can. And then we'll work with you to actually fight that. But the point is, again, if you're looking at foreign governments, we're part of the Five Eyes solution, right? So America, New Zealand, Australia, UK, and Canada. So those Five Eyes folks, right? If they want your data, are you sure that your Australian government's not going to do that sort of stuff as well? So the point is, what are you storing in Salesforce you're worried about? That's the thing as well, right? You shouldn't be storing stuff in there you don't want people to look at. The point is, this happens extremely rarely. There's very, very few subpoenas ever put up on Salesforce.
It's not common at all.
No, I think there was less than 5 last financial year. So there's a very, very small number across the whole world of Salesforce. Now the point is, again, most of the time, the government's going to come to you and say, hand it over. If you're an Australian company, you've got a subsidiary in the US government's going to go to that subsidiary and say, hand the data over.
And just on the IRAP certification, are you pursuing protected access?
Yes, we are.
Classified?
Yes, we are pursuing it. Anything else? No, lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a great day. Thank you.